All right, mybookie.ag, promo code HAM, and the numeral 1, HAM1, mybookie.ag, promo code HAM1. NFC and AFC division odds out. And I was looking at the NFC. I guess we could include the AFC in this too, John. But the question is, do the Niners have good odds to win the division? Do you like the value, or is there another value out there that you like? I know this in terms of the NFC. We can go both conferences divisional odds. I think my favorite odds is not the Niners minus 110, but the Eagles at plus 140 to win the NFC East. But is there anybody else out there you like more than the Niners? Maybe like the Seahawks at plus 250?
Yeah, I think three teams jump out to me. The Seahawks at plus 250, they were just an inch away. I guess, legitimately 6 inches? Was that
less.
The final number?
Yeah,
yeah,
millimeters.
It was short to winning the division. And I think it's fair to say they're not as talented as the Niners. But we all know when those two teams play each other, it's a knockdown, drag-out game. So if the Seahawks, like they did last year, can split, they find a way to pull these games out of their ass. It's like 250 for a team that's won this division a lot of times over the last decade and still has easily the best quarterback in the division. Feels like a pretty good odds. This one's a little bit crazy, but hear me out. They started 1-7 and then finished the season 7-9. And down the stretch, they beat the Saints. They beat the 49ers at Levi's. Now, I always push back when teams with weird records beat, teams that win 12, 13 games late in the season. You overlook them a little bit. But I think you watch that Falcons team, like they have elite players. They have a big-time quarterback. They have multiple star wide receivers. When he's on, you could say Julio's as dominant as anyone. They have Todd Gurley, which we talk like Todd Gurley shot, and I think physically he's not the same guy, but you and I have been talking about for like a year, I guess less than a year, but during the season, he actually was really productive. He had 12 rushing touchdowns, I think, and 2 in the air. Like, he had 14 total touchdowns. So it's like, yeah, this guy shot. How many touchdowns does he have? 1? You're like, 14. 14 touchdowns. If you ever meet a human being like at a restaurant and he's like, I played in the NFL, you'd be like, what position you play? You're like, running back. He's like, what was your best season? You're like, he's got a season where he scored 14 touchdowns. You'd be like, oh my God, this guy was a star. So is it that crazy? They pulled names out of a hat. They just have some talent. Now, that division, you'd go, the Saints are really good. It feels like Tampa, I don't know, it almost too good to be true. I mean, I think they're going to be a playoff team, but are they just going to win the division with – they haven't been able to practice. Bruce Arians, Tom Brady. There are a lot of variables there. I like the Falcons as a value bet.
Right, because they're plus Tampa. Because they're plus 700.
You might call me biased on this one, but when I look at the Packers and the Vikings, I go, well, Green Bay's solid, but I think they overachieved last year. They're not a 13-win team, but they're probably win between 8 to 10, so they're going to be in the mix to win their division. I think the Vikings got worse. They traded, the high character version of Antonio Brown. Like, he doesn't really get in trouble, but he's clearly a diva. But bottom line is, you look at his numbers, he's had 160 catches and I think 15 touchdowns the last 2 years in Stephon Diggs. Like, the guy's a stud. And they get rid of him. They get rid of Xavier Rhodes. They get rid of Everson Griffin. I mean, they've just gotten rid of some stalwarts on that defense, which has been one of the better defense. You'd go, well, they could come back to earth a little bit. The Bears went 8-8 last year with bottom 2 or 3 quarterback play. If their quarterback play is just middle of the pack and their defense just is a little bit better than it was still top 5 or 6 in the league last year. They won the division 2 years ago with Trubisky. You're telling me they couldn't win the division this year? Basically almost 4-1. I'm just looking value there.
Yep. No, I don't think you're crazy on that one. I do like that. Now the question is health of Foles, but no, I like that, and like I said, I like the Eagles. The Cowboys the Cowboys have the same odds as the 49ers to win their division.
If I told you which team, because they just feel like, they were 2 playoff teams, Packers or Vikings, least out of the 2 of them, you won't be shocked if they miss the playoffs this year.
I wouldn't
Packers would be the Vikings.
Individually, I wouldn't be shocked if either one of them missed the playoffs. The Packers did go 13-3 last year. We both thought they were not as good as that record. But it happened.
Yeah. I think and you say he's not the same guy, whatever you want. Aaron Rodgers still their quarterback. So if if a team could regress a little bit, maybe Kirk Cousins, who lost his offensive coordinator, Stefanski, went to the Browns. I think it's fair to say that the Vikings could just be one of those 7-8 win teams that was just feisty, might have some upsets throughout the season, but just lose some dumb games. Because they lose dumb games now when they're good, right? The last couple of years with Cousins.
Here's the other thing: the margins.
They would be my pick.
The Eagles won their division last year. Now they won it at 9-7, and the Cowboys were 8-8, and the Cowboys got Mike McCarthy. But I think that's an upgrade. But is it an upgrade enough that I should pick the Cowboys to win that division this year? I don't think so. I'll tell you the other one I like. A couple AFC.
They've won the division 2 of the last 3 years.
So that feels like an easy one to me.
Do they have the best quarterback in the division?
Without question.
So,
how about Houston plus 325? The Colts and the Titans both above them. Colts at plus 120, Titans at plus 170. I mean, you have to, as much as you like Frank Reich, you're giving Phillip Rivers a lot of credit if you think the Colts are going to roll out and win that division. I know they traded DeAndre Hopkins, but we talk about this all the time. Bill O'Brien just competes every single year. And to your point on the Eagles, same thing you could say about the Texans. They have the best quarterback in that division. So I think in the AFC.
And didn't they just win the division as well?
And they just won the division. They just won the division.
Yeah. Doesn't it feel like they kind of win the division a decent amount of times? Does any team get less respected than actually functions? Like they're talked about like, oh, who are the worst teams in the league? You'd be like, oh, the Jags, the Browns, the Raiders have had a rough 20 years. Oh, the Bill O'Brien and the Texans.
Yeah, I mean, maybe not worse, but if you say like, who are the league's train wrecks, right? It's almost that type discussion that happens around them.
Yeah, it'd be like, oh, Dan Snyder, Bill O'Brien, nut jobs, Jimmy Haslam. Like, well, Bill O'Brien, I get he's kind of angry and he does some weird personnel moves, but when the dust settles, it's like, God, the Texans won 11 games, Because they do. It's not like when's the last time, I guess they won, was his rookie year when Deshaun tore his ACL and then he they threw back out. I can't even remember who Case Keenum or Hackenberg or they were in train wreck. But as long as Deshaun Watson has been their quarterback, they have gone to and played in January. And they're almost 4-1. That seems pretty nuts to me. Like how are their odds and the Bears' odds the same to win their divisions?
Well, I would go back to how are the Patriots are plus 100, by the way.
I think that number jumped a little bit once they signed Cameron Newton.
How are the Cowboys and the 49ers odds the same?
It's to me, who's the second? Clear.
Who's the second best team out of those two divisions? Philly or Seattle?
Well, I think they played twice last year, and Seattle beat them both times. I guess beat them when it mattered, but Carson Wentz was hurt. They were both so hurt. I kind of feel like they're similar. They're kind of scrappy teams. They just have a lot of injuries. It feels like pretty consistently the last couple of years. You'd probably lean just Russell, but are we sure that Carson Wentz couldn't have beat that Seattle team that was kind of limping into the playoffs? I mean, they actually were in the mix with McCown, who turns out had a torn hamstring, remember? The game wasn't a blowout. I'd say it's a coin flip, pretty similar, both of them. But I'd say the Eagles and Seattle would say we're both better than the Cowboys, right?
Yes.
If I was ranking the teams, I would have the Cowboys as the fourth best team of that group.
Yeah,
the Niners, Philly,
I guess part
Seattle.
of it is just their it is related. We're talking about winning your division here, right? So,
but they play each other this year.
No, I know, but I'm just saying and maybe the other part of it is just it's the Cowboys, because we'll talk about on the next pod. I'm actually, now that I say that, they have better odds to win the conference than the Seahawks do. So,
well, you would also say getting the Giants and getting the Redskins 4 total games is a lot easier than getting the Rams and the Cardinals 4 total games.
I think you mean the Radskins.
Yeah, the Red Wolves.
Yeah, that's true.
The Snyders, the Riveras.
That's true.
That factors in to win the division. Because that division last year, like you said, the Eagles went 9-7 and won the division. I mean, it took the Dan Buns 2.0 tackle, and one of the teams was either going to win 13 or 12 games to win the division. So that's at minimum if Seattle had won, it was a 3-game difference. With the Niners winning that game, it was a 4-game difference in the division. Like if the Eagles were in the NFC West last year, they would have been like they were the Rams. I mean, they went 9-7. And it does feel like the Rams are actually a little better than the Eagles when you factor in. I mean, the Eagles were playing with practice squad guys.
So you
See,
can,
yeah. I mean,
I don't hate win $90 on 100 on the 49ers, John. I don't think it's great. I mean, I think the Seahawks, just from a value, that is good value, but the 49ers should be the better football team.
I would agree.